Money's nothing but paper and green ink. The thing that gives it value is how it's earned. Now, an outlaw's money is never earned. Come on, Mark. Let's leave these decent folks to their important business.
A widowed rancher, a modified Winchester, and a 12-year-old boy who could cry without glycerin drops. The Rifleman wasn't just another Western filling ABC's primetime slots in 1958. It was television revolution wrapped in leather and gunpowder, a show that dared to ask, what if the fastest gun in the West was also the most reluctant to use it? But here's what they never told you. The star nearly walked away after season 1. That iconic rifle trick, it failed constantly, injuring crew members and leaving the prop department in chaos. And there was an episode, filmed, completed, and buried, so psychologically brutal that network executives hid it from audiences for over 20 years. Today, we're loading up with 28 facts that will completely change how you see this classic series. And wait until you hear about the final episode that was written but never filmed. The reason why will leave you speechless. Let's ride. Secret 1. The athlete who became a legend. Chuck Connors wasn't supposed to be anywhere near a soundstage. At 6 feet 5 inches, he was crushing it on basketball courts and baseball diamonds, bouncing between the NBA and minor league baseball. Acting? That was just something to pay bills between seasons. He'd done small parts, a soldier here, a tough guy there, nothing memorable, nothing that stuck. Then came the audition that would change everything. Picture this.
Due east.
You've got a good wind finger, Mark. What does due east mean?
Connors walks into the casting room wearing borrowed boots and a hat 2 sizes too small. He doesn't perform the lines like a trained actor polishing every syllable. He reads them like a man who's already lost everything and is holding on to one last reason to keep breathing. The room goes silent, dead silent. They don't ask for a second reading. They don't request changes. They simply say, "You're Lucas McCain." And just like that, a professional athlete stopped acting and became something else entirely. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. That authenticity, that raw survival instinct, it would nearly destroy him. Secret 2. The rifle that almost killed the show. You know that smooth, effortless rifle spin that became the Rifleman's signature? The move that made kids across America beg their parents for toy Winchesters? It was a mechanical nightmare. The prop department took a standard 1892 Winchester, shortened the barrel, and enlarged the lever loop so Connors could cock it one-handed mid-swing. Brilliant in concept, catastrophic in execution. The modifications made the rifle fundamentally unstable. It jammed constantly. The oversized loop caught on Connors's gloves, his holster, even his own fingers. During early test shoots, it misfired twice, once sending a blank so close to a cameraman's face that he refused to return to work the next day.
But they sure have taken a liking to you.
I like people like me.
The prop department had to build multiple backup rifles, each slightly different, each requiring constant adjustment between takes. And Connors? He practiced that spin for hours, every single day, before filming, during lunch breaks, at home after wrap. His hands were covered in blisters for the entire first month of production. But he never complained, never asked for a stunt double, never suggested using a safer prop. Why? Because Chuck Connors understood something the producers were still figuring out. The rifle wasn't just Lucas McCain's weapon, it was his identity. If the rifle didn't work, the show didn't work. So he made it work. One painful, bloody spin at a time. Secret 3. The child star who saved everything. Johnny Crawford was 12 years old when he walked into the audition. But he wasn't some random kid plucked from obscurity. He was a seasoned professional, a former Mouseketeer who'd been performing since he could barely read. The producers saw hundreds of children for the role of Mark McCain. Most were too polished, too Hollywood, too obviously acting. Crawford walked in with something different, something dangerous, a vulnerability mixed with toughness that made him feel real. But here's what sealed the deal: the chemistry test with Chuck Connors. The moment they stood together, something clicked. Connors didn't treat Crawford like a co-star or a prop. He treated him like a son, immediately, naturally, without any discussion or planning. Between takes, Connors would ruffle Crawford's hair, share lunch under the brutal California sun,
When you get to Yuma, you'll convince those railroad men that we should get the spur instead of Center City.
Now, hold on now, Mark.
Give him advice about timing and emotional truth, and Crawford absorbed everything like a sponge, soaking up water in the desert. The bond you see on screen, that trust, that love, that raw fear in Mark's eyes when his father's in danger, none of it was scripted, none of it was technique. It was two actors who became family, and that authenticity became the show's emotional core. The reason millions tuned in every week wasn't to see gunfights. It was to see a father and son figuring out how to survive together. But wait, until you hear what happened when Crawford's voice changed mid-series. The network wanted to fire him. What Chuck Connors did next shocked everyone. Secret 4, the theme song they almost destroyed. That iconic brassy theme song pounding through your speakers right now? The network absolutely hated it. Composer Herschel Burke Gilbert created something bold, heavy percussion with a driving rhythm that felt more like a military march than a traditional Western ballad. The executive's response? Too aggressive, too militaristic. It doesn't sound like Gunsmoke or Bonanza. And they were right. It didn't sound like those shows. It sounded like war. Gilbert fought back. Lucas McCain isn't a peaceful rancher, he argued.
When we get that railroad spur here in North Fork, that'll mean that you'll ship your cattle by train, won't it?
Yes, why?
He's a man constantly at war, with his past, with the violence around him, with the responsibility of raising a son alone in brutal territory. The music needs to reflect that tension. The network pushed for something softer, more family-friendly, more safe. Series creator Arnold Lavin drew a line in the sand. Change the music, you change the show. Test audiences responded overwhelmingly to the aggressive theme. Within weeks of premiere, it became one of the most recognizable TV themes of the era, not because it was safe, because it was dangerous. Secret 5, the title that changed everything. The working title through development, casting, and filming of the pilot was The Sharpshooter. Makes sense, right? Lucas McCain was the fastest shot in the West, but Arnold Lavin realized something crucial as he watched Chuck Connors embody the character. This show wasn't about shooting, it was about a weapon that represented protection, responsibility, and the crushing moral weight of violence.
Money's nothing but paper and green ink. The thing that gives it value is how it's earned. Now, an outlaw's money is never earned.
Every episode, Lucas used that rifle, but he never celebrated it. He carried it like a burden. The Sharpshooter made it sound like a celebration of gunplay. The Rifleman made it about the man forced to carry the gun. The network resisted. They'd already printed promotional materials, locked in advertising contracts, built an entire marketing campaign. Changing it would cost time and money. Lavin wouldn't budge. 2 weeks before premiere, they made the switch. One word. One shift in focus. A show about violence became a show about fatherhood. Secret 6, the desert that nearly killed them. Most TV shows film on controlled sound stages with air conditioning and carefully managed environments. The Rifleman did it differently. They filmed on location in the actual California desert under relentless sun that regularly hit 110 degrees. No air conditioning, no shade structures between takes, just open land, dust, and heat that made crew members physically ill. Chuck Connors would finish a scene drenched in sweat, change shirts, and go again. Johnny Crawford, barely a teenager, passed out twice from heat exhaustion during the first season.
Come on, Mark. Let's leave these decent folks to their important business.
Cameramen wrapped their equipment in wet towels to prevent overheating. Production days stretched to 12 hours in conditions that would shut down modern sets immediately. But Arnold Lavin wanted the show to feel real, not like a studio western with painted backdrops and artificial lighting. He wanted dust in the air, sun in the actors' eyes, sweat that wasn't makeup. And he got it, at a brutal cost. The exhaustion you see on their faces, real. The dirt, the fatigue, the rawness, all real. The Rifleman looked different from other westerns because it was made differently, harder, hotter, without compromise. Secret 7. The mother they refused to add. The father-son relationship was groundbreaking for the 1950s television. It also nearly killed the show before it started. Network executives were nervous about a single father raising a child without a woman in the picture. Where was the mother? Why wasn't there a romantic subplot to soften Lucas McCain's rough edges? They pushed hard for a love interest, a school teacher, a widow, someone to provide maternal energy and give female viewers someone to connect with. Arnold Levin refused. "The absence of the mother is the whole point," he told them. "Lucas is alone."
Do I have to get to bed so soon, Pa?
Look, if the trail hadn't washed out, you'd be home in your own bed and fast asleep by now.
Raising his son in a violent world, trying to teach him right from wrong without a partner to share the burden. That isolation, that struggle, it's the show's emotional engine. The network threatened to pull funding unless romantic episodes were written into the first season. Levin compromised slightly. He allowed occasional female guest stars who expressed interest in Lucas, but none of them stayed. Every episode, Lucas chose his son over romance. Audiences connected with that, not because it was comfortable, but because it was honest. A widowed father doing his best, making mistakes, never quite knowing if he was enough. Secret 8. The Man Who Hated Guns. Here's the irony that haunted Chuck Connors for 5 seasons. In real life, he was deeply uncomfortable around firearms, no interest in hunting, actively avoided shooting ranges. Yet here he was, starring in a show where he handled a rifle in every single episode. During pre-production, he spent weeks training with weapons experts, learning not just how to hold the Winchester, but how to move with it, spin it, cock it mid-motion without looking. But privately, he told friends it felt wrong. He worried the show glorified violence, that kids watching would think guns were toys.
Mark had a cold. It wasn't much, but you know how it is. You being alone with the boy for the first time.
So Connors made a decision that changed everything. In every episode, he pushed for dialogue that emphasized the weight of taking a life, the responsibility that came with carrying a weapon, the idea that violence should always be the last resort. He'd fight with writers about scripts that made killing look easy. Slowly, the show began to reflect his values. Lucas McCain became a man who carried a rifle but hated using it, a sharpshooter who aimed for legs, not hearts, a father who taught his son that strength wasn't about how fast you could draw, but about knowing when not to. Chuck Connors hated guns, and that made Lucas McCain the perfect gunslinger. Secret 9. The episode Too Dark to Air. There's an episode so psychologically brutal that the network refused to air it for over 20 years. In the story, Lucas McCain confronts the man who murdered his wife years earlier, Mark's mother. The script was unflinching. It forced Lucas to make an impossible choice between justice and revenge. He doesn't shoot the man. He beats him. With his hands. With rage. With years of buried grief exploding in one terrible moment, and Mark watches the whole thing. The scene was shot in one long take. Chuck Connors didn't hold back. He wasn't acting. He was channeling something real, something terrifying. When it ended, the set went silent.
Noon, you're supposed to be in school.
Well, I stopped by Hattie's at lunchtime to get the mail. This came for you.
The director called cut, but nobody moved. They knew they'd just captured something powerful. Maybe too powerful. When network executives screened it, they panicked. This isn't family entertainment. This is trauma. They pulled the episode, shelved it, quietly replaced it in the lineup with a rerun. For 2 decades, only people who worked on the show knew it existed. Then, in the 1980s, someone found the footage and leaked it. Fans demanded to see it, and when it finally aired, audiences understood why it had been hidden. Because The Rifleman was never just a Western. It was a show about pain. Secret 10. The star who wanted to quit. After the first season wrapped, Chuck Connors wanted out. He was exhausted, physically drained from the heat and schedule, emotionally spent from carrying a show that demanded so much intensity week after week. He told producers he'd done what he came to do. Time to move on while the show was still respected. The network panicked. Without Connors, there was no Rifleman. They offered more money. He refused. They offered creative control. He hesitated. And then Johnny Crawford showed up at his house unannounced. The kid didn't beg, didn't guilt trip.
Well, a lot of people will be surprised when they read this. I better tell Mike and Hamilton and the rest of the council.
He just said, "I'm not ready for it to be over." That was it. Connors looked at this 13-year-old who'd become like a son to him and realized he couldn't walk away. Not yet. Not while the show still had something to say. So he came back for season 2, and 3, and 4. Not because of money, not because of fame, but because a kid asked him to. That bond, the one that made the show work, it was real, and it saved The Rifleman from ending before it had even begun. Secret 11. The Pistol That Disappeared. In early episodes, Lucas McCain wore a revolver on his hip, a standard Colt that was supposed to serve as backup if the rifle failed. Chuck Connors hated it. He argued that having 2 guns undermined the entire concept. The rifle was special because it was the only weapon Lucas needed. Adding a pistol made him look like every other gunslinger on television. The producers disagreed. It's unrealistic for a rancher in dangerous territory to rely on just 1 gun. Connors didn't care about realism. He cared about symbolism. The rifle represented responsibility, precision, the idea that Lucas McCain didn't shoot unless he was certain.
You talk too much, Dave. If you were going to shoot me, you should have done it as soon as I read you that letter.
A pistol was for quick draws and shootouts, exactly the kind of violence the show was trying to move away from. So Connors made a deal. He'd wear the revolver for the first few episodes, but he'd never draw it, never reference it, never acknowledge its existence. And slowly, quietly, the pistol disappeared from his costume. By mid-season, it was gone entirely. Lucas McCain became the only Western hero who carried just 1 gun, not because he couldn't handle more, but because he didn't need to. Secret 12. The Voice That Nearly Destroyed a Career. Johnny Crawford's voice changed mid-series and it nearly destroyed his character. He was cast at 12, still prepubescent, with a high, clear voice that made him sound innocent and vulnerable. By season 3, puberty hit hard and fast. His voice dropped, cracked, became unpredictable. Some takes he'd sound like a boy, others like a young man. The audio department tried everything.
Don't make sense, a man leaving money to somebody you don't know.
Look, if we knew each other, Mark, don't you think I'd remember him?
Adjusted microphone placement, filtered recordings, even considered dubbing his lines with a younger actor's voice. Nothing worked. Crawford was devastated. He thought he'd be fired, replaced with a kid whose voice hadn't changed yet. Chuck Connors stepped in. He went to the producers and argued that the voice change was perfect. Mark McCain is growing up on screen. Audiences should see that transformation, hear it, live through it with him. The show was about a father raising a son. Well, sons grow up. Their voices change. They become men. The producers listened. Instead of hiding Crawford's changing voice, they leaned into it. Scripts started acknowledging Mark's age, giving him more adult responsibilities, more complex moral dilemmas. The boy became a young man, and the show became richer for it. Secret 13. The Town That Lived Forever. The town of North Fork didn't exist. Every exterior shot, every dusty street, every saloon and general store was built from scratch on a California ranch specifically for the Rifleman. And when filming ended each season, they left it standing. Other shows started using it. Bonanza filmed there. Gunsmoke, The Virginian. Dozens of westerns recycled the same sets, the same buildings, the same dirt roads. But fans of The Rifleman could always spot it. Something distinctive about the layout. The way the marshal's office sat at an angle to the main street. The covered porch on the hotel. It became one of the most filmed locations in television history. Chuck Connors once brought his own children to the set during hiatus. He showed them the McCain Ranch House, the town square where Lucas had faced down dozens of villains. His kids asked if it was real. Connors didn't know how to answer, because in a way, it was more real than anything else in his career. That fake town had become home. Secret 14. The Mentor Behind the Marshal. Paul Fix played Marshal Micah Torrance, Lucas McCain's best friend and moral compass. But Fix wasn't just an actor. He was John Wayne's mentor, the man who taught the Duke how to walk, talk, and embody the Western hero archetype that defined American cinema. Fix had been acting since the silent era, working in over 300 films before The Rifleman even existed, and he brought all that history, all that gravitas into every scene. Between takes, Fix and Connors would sit together. Fix telling stories about old Hollywood, about working with Ford and Hawks, about the days when westerns were shot in real deserts with real danger. Connors absorbed it all. He later said that working with Paul Fix was like getting a masterclass in acting every single day. The Marshal wasn't just a supporting character. He was the show's connection to Western tradition, the link between old Hollywood and new television. When Fix died in 1983, Connors didn't talk about it publicly. He just stopped watching reruns of The Rifleman, because seeing Micah meant remembering everything he'd learned, everything he'd lost. Secret 15, the episode Without Gunfire. There's an episode where Lucas McCain doesn't fire his rifle once, not a single shot. The story follows Mark getting involved with older boys who pressure him into stealing. Lucas finds out, and the entire episode is just conversations. Father and son talking about right and wrong, about peer pressure, about the kind of man Mark wants to become. No gunfights, no showdowns, no dramatic rescues, just words. The network hated it. Viewers tune in to see action. A talking episode will kill ratings. Arnold Lovin fought for it. If this show is really about fatherhood, there need to be episodes that focus purely on that relationship, without violence as a crutch. The executives reluctantly approved it, expecting it to be the lowest-rated episode of the season. But when it aired, something unexpected happened. The ratings went up. Letters poured in from parents, thanking the show for addressing real issues, for showing a father who disciplined with words instead of fists, who listened instead of just commanding. That one quiet episode proved The Rifleman was something different, something more than just another shoot-'em-up western. For 1 week, the rifle stayed silent, while a father taught his son what courage really meant. Secret 16, the stunt that almost killed the star. Chuck Connors did his own stunts, and it almost killed him. In a Season 4 episode, Lucas had to leap from a moving wagon onto a galloping horse. The stunt coordinator mapped it out carefully, practiced the timing, set up safety measures. During filming, the horse spooked. It veered left instead of right. Connors, already mid-jump, couldn't adjust. He hit the ground hard, shoulder first, at full speed. The impact knocked him unconscious. Production shut down. An ambulance was called. For several terrifying minutes, nobody knew if he'd broken his neck. He woke up in the hospital with a separated shoulder, 3 cracked ribs, and a concussion that left him dizzy for weeks. Doctors told him he was done, that he needed months of recovery. He was back on set in 10 days, shoulder taped, ribs wrapped, still dizzy, but refusing to show it. The producers begged him to use a stunt double from then on. He agreed, then ignored them, and kept doing the stunts anyway. Why? Because he believed if the audience saw someone else doing Lucas McCain's action scenes, they'd stop believing in Lucas McCain. So he kept jumping off wagons, kept throwing punches, kept risking his body week after week. Not for glory, not for money, but because he refused to fake what mattered. Secret 17, the guest star who changed everything. In Season 3, producers wanted someone massive for a 2-part episode. A villain so threatening that Lucas would be genuinely afraid. They offered the role to Lee Marvin, already a rising star known for playing brutal, unpredictable characters. Marvin read the script and said yes immediately. Then his film schedule ran over. Suddenly he couldn't make the dates. Panic set in. They'd already promoted his appearance, written the script specifically for his energy. Someone suggested Dennis Hopper. He was young, intense, completely different from Marvin, but equally dangerous. Hopper came in, read through the scenes once, and transformed them into something darker than anyone expected. He didn't play the villain as a tough guy. He played him as unhinged, unstable, barely controlled chaos. His scenes with Connors crackled with genuine tension, because neither actor knew quite what the other would do. Connors later admitted those episodes scared him, that Hopper's unpredictability made him genuinely uncomfortable on set, and that discomfort translated directly to screen. Lee Marvin would have been great, but Dennis Hopper was unforgettable. Secret 18, the ending they never got. The series finale wasn't planned. ABC canceled The Rifleman abruptly after 5 seasons, not because of ratings, but because they wanted to shift to color programming. The Rifleman was still shooting in black and white. The cast found out the same way viewers did, through a network announcement. No warning, no chance to write a proper ending. The final episode that aired, Old Tony, was just another story, not a conclusion. Lucas doesn't ride off into the sunset. Mark doesn't come of age. The show just stops. Chuck Connors was furious. He'd spent 5 years building this character, this relationship with Johnny Crawford. And the network didn't even give them a chance to say goodbye properly. He contacted Arnold Lavin and pitched an idea. Film 1 more episode privately, independently. Give the show the ending it deserved. Lavin loved it, but the costs were prohibitive. The legal complications with ABC too complex. It never happened. And so The Rifleman ended mid-story, mid-life, frozen in time. Lucas and Mark McCain are still out there somewhere in 1880s New Mexico, still facing threats, still figuring out how to be father and son. The lack of closure was frustrating. But maybe it was perfect, because real life doesn't have neat endings, and The Rifleman was always more real than most shows dared to be. Secret 19, the role he couldn't escape. Years after the show ended, Chuck Connors struggled to escape Lucas McCain. He took other roles, played villains, comedic parts, dramatic characters, trying desperately to show his range. But casting directors only saw The Rifleman. They'd offer him Western after Western. Always the same archetype. He turned most of them down. He wanted to be seen as an actor, not just a cowboy. But the public wouldn't let him go. Fans approached him everywhere, calling him Lucas, asking about Mark, wanting to talk about episodes from years ago. At first, he was gracious, signing autographs, taking photos, sharing stories. But as decades passed, it began to feel like a prison. The role that made him famous had also made him invisible. Nobody saw Chuck Connors anymore. They only saw the character. In his final years, he made peace with it. He started attending Western conventions, reuniting with Johnny Crawford, talking openly about The Rifleman with pride instead of resentment. He realized the show had mattered to people, had shaped childhoods, had taught lessons about fatherhood that resonated across generations. And that mattered more than range, more than other roles, more than ego. Lucas McCain had become bigger than him, and maybe that wasn't a curse. Maybe it was the greatest achievement of his life. Secret 20, the rifle that vanished. The rifle that made the show famous, that Chuck Connors spun thousands of times across 5 seasons, it's gone. After the series ended, the prop department stored it with other equipment, treating it like any other piece of Hollywood history. Over the years, it disappeared. Some say it was stolen during a studio lot clearance. Others claim it was sold at auction without anyone realizing what it was. Connors searched for it decades later, wanting to donate it to a Western museum. He could never track it down. Replicas exist. Fans have built exact duplicates. But the original, the actual Winchester that became one of the most famous weapons in television history, vanished without a trace. And maybe that's fitting, because The Rifleman was never really about the gun. It was about the man who carried it, the boy he raised, and the impossible balance between violence and love. The rifle was just steel and wood, but what it represented, the responsibility, the burden, the choice to protect rather than destroy, that stayed, not in a museum, not behind glass, but in every father who watches the show with his son trying to figure out how to be strong and gentle at the same time. The rifle's gone, but Lucas McCain is still teaching us how to aim true. Bonus secrets. But wait, we promised you 28 secrets, and there are 8 more that will shake everything you thought you knew. Secret 21. The 6th season that never was. There was supposed to be a 6th season. Scripts were written, plots outlined, guest stars contacted. The plan was to age Mark up significantly, show him as a young man starting to take over the ranch, beginning to see his father not as invincible, but as human, flawed, aging, Lucas would struggle with letting go, with trusting his son to face dangers alone. A complete role reversal, with Mark protecting Lucas instead of the other way around. The writers called it, "The son becomes the father." When ABC canceled the show, those scripts were locked away. Johnny Crawford found them years later while going through Arnold Lavin's estate after he died. He sat down and read every one, crying through pages that showed where their characters would have gone. He never shared them publicly. "Some stories are meant to stay private," he said. But he kept those scripts, and sometimes, late at night, he'd read them again, remembering what could have been. Secret 22. The real-life friendship. Chuck Connors and Johnny Crawford's relationship extended far beyond the set. Connors became a genuine father figure, attending Crawford's school events, giving him advice about growing up in Hollywood, protecting him from the darker sides of the industry. When Crawford's father died, Connors stepped in without hesitation. The bond you saw on screen was real, and it lasted until Connors' death in 1992. Secret 23. The political controversy. Several episodes tackled racism and prejudice in ways that were revolutionary for late 1950s television. One episode featured Lucas defending a black family from discrimination. Southern affiliates refused to air it. The network received hundreds of angry letters. Arnold Lavin refused to apologize or make changes. "If we can't stand for something," he said, "we should just make another gunslinger show." Secret 24. The injury no one saw. During Season 2, Chuck Connors broke 2 fingers on his right hand, his rifle hand. He didn't report it to production because he was afraid they'd shut down filming. He continued performing the rifle spin with broken fingers for 3 weeks until they healed enough to seek medical attention. Secret 25. The lost episodes. 3 complete episodes were filmed but never aired during the original run. They dealt with topics the network deemed too controversial: alcoholism, domestic violence, and PTSD, though they didn't call it that in 1960. These episodes finally surfaced in syndication decades later. Secret 26. The music rights battle. The theme song's composer, Herschel Burke Gilbert, fought a decades-long legal battle over royalties. The network claimed they owned the music outright. Gilbert argued he'd only licensed it. He finally won his case in 1979, 20 years after the show premiered. Secret 27. The modern legacy. The Rifleman has been cited as a major influence by filmmakers, including Quentin Tarantino and the Coen brothers. The modified Winchester rifle has appeared in dozens of films and shows as a tribute to the series. Secret 28. The reunion that almost happened. In 1991, there were serious discussions about a Rifleman TV movie reunion. Chuck Connors and Johnny Crawford both agreed. Scripts were being written. Then Connors was diagnosed with lung cancer. He died in November 1992, and the project died with him. Crawford said the hardest part wasn't that the reunion never happened. It was knowing he'd never get to say goodbye to Lucas McCain properly. Just like the show itself, The Rifleman wasn't just a Western. It was a meditation on violence, responsibility, and what it means to raise a child in a world that demands toughness but needs tenderness. It gave us a hero who was fastest with a gun but slowest to use it, a father who made mistakes but never stopped trying, a boy who grew into a man right before our eyes. The rifle may be lost. The show may have ended abruptly. Chuck Connors may have struggled with the character that defined him, but Lucas McCain is still out there, still teaching us, still showing us that strength isn't about how fast you can draw. It's about knowing when not to. If you discovered something new today, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into classic television, and share this with someone who grew up watching The Rifleman, or someone who needs to discover it for the first time. Because some stories don't end when the cameras stop rolling. Some lessons echo across generations, and some fathers, real or fictional, never stop teaching us how to be better. Thanks for watching. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go find that lost rifle. Something tells me there are more secrets waiting to be uncovered.